Today is a special edition of the Modern Husbands and For Better and Worth podcasts. We recorded together and shared lessons learned in our own lives and in past podcast episodes. Chris and Ericka Young are the co-hosts of For Better and Worth, where couples learn how to have a healthy net worth and a happy, lasting relationship. Better and Worth was the 2023 Plutus Award winner for Best Content, Families or Couples. Chris and Ericka have been married for nearly 25 years. Chris has mastered the art of the deal as a business and sales professional for 20 plus years. Ericka has helped 500 plus clients and various corporate audiences get real and naked with money for 18 years. Together, they have leveraged this corporate and real-world experience for their own bottom line. Dr. Bruce Ross, Christian Sherrill, and Brian Page are the co-hosts of the Modern Husbands podcast, where they host experts who share winning ideas to manage money and the home as a team. Modern Husbands was a 2023 Plutus Award finalist for Best Content, Families or Couples. Dr. Ross is an associate professor at the University of Kentucky and secretary of the Financial Therapy Association. His professional expertise focuses on family financial planning. Christian Sherrill is the director of growth and advocacy at NextGen Personal Finance, and Brian Page is the founder of Modern Husbands. All of the hosts open up about the advice that is easy for us to give, but harder for us to do. The non-negotiables in our financial lives that arise from our professional lives as personal finance experts, and the steps Dr. Ross has taken thus far in his own engagement as he transitions to marriage. Enjoy the show.
Chris, Ericka, thank you so much for being on this podcast with us. We're so excited to have you. I mean, as Brian said in the intro, nearly 25 years of marriage. That's so exciting. Congratulations. And so really just looking forward to getting some of these pearls of wisdom from you.
Thank you for having us today.
Yeah, we're glad to be here.
We came representing too, so
yeah. Thanks for the shout out.
Dr. Ross, I think it'd be remiss for us to not point out that at the time of recording this, it is 6 days prior to Ohio State beating the team up north.
Oh, no. Let's back up. Let's back up. I have to defend as a Michigan alum.
Exactly.
That this is not the way it's going down in 6 days. We will have a fierce competition, and hopefully no one gets hurt in the making of that movie on that day. Okay.
That's the game. Fair. That is, and I should have not started that way because I'm a little afraid I'm going to eat my words.
Listen, the last 2 years y'all been eating some words. I would love for this to be a three-peat. Okay.
Yes, I will. I'm going to continue moving from this point on with some humility.
Yes, go blue.
See, we're all about, we let the action speak, but a trifecta would be nice.
Right, exactly. I'm just saying.
In the UK, it's just natural to say go blue. So
we love Dr. Ross.
But again, thank you for having us on today, and we'll make sure we get the listeners and viewers what they need.
Rivalry aside, on to our regularly scheduled programming.
We'll just end, Brian's going to lose. Michigan will win. And we'll move on into my questions here. All right. So
absolutely.
So Ericka, Chris, I want to start with you, and then I will ask the same question to Brian. But what are a few examples of moments that are easy for you to give advice on, but are hard for you to do personally?
Man, well, you want to start this out, babe?
I can. What I do want to give this caveat. I love budgeting. So as a financial coach, a financial educator, it's super easy for me to say, go do a budget. Now, I don't lead with that anymore because a lot of people hate that word, that terminology. And so I reframe. And I'll be honest, I love budgeting myself. So that part isn't difficult. What I will say is we do talk a lot about money. And I think sometimes nowadays it's easy for me to tell somebody to have a moment, have a conversation or schedule some time with your partner just to make sure that you're talking about certain aspects of your money, be it budgeting or anything else, and make sure that you have some high points, things that you really want to make sure that you cover. And I think lately it's been hard. We've had a couple of money conversations in the last 2 months that we've needed to have. And we're coming up on the end of the year. And we have yet to have these conversations. So like, I'll tell people, yes, you need to talk about it, discuss it, have, a light agenda, 2 or 3 things you really want to make sure that you dive into. And there's one thing in particular we have not that we're avoiding it, but we haven't made it a priority. And so it's hard in practice for us to do these things as well. So I want people to understand that it's not, just because we say do these things, that it's actually easy for us to do all of it. Sometimes it's challenging for us to make the time and make it a priority, just like it probably would be for other folks.
Yeah, I mean, I hear where you're coming from, but I think we still along the way have conversations. There's like a couple of big items that we really need to kind of allocate some time to dig into it
Mhm.
because we're both busy and we're on the go and we have separate schedules. And in that, it becomes kind of challenging. But when you were talking about some of the things that's good to talk about in practice and, difficult to do,
Mhm.
when you start talking about budgeting, I thought you were going to go there. You're talking more about the money meetings.
Yeah.
I think just budgeting in general, people have a challenge with that. It has become second nature for us, but I still think it can be challenging to tell people to do it. And
Yeah.
then, because our situation has evolved over the years, we don't necessarily have to adhere to the budget stringently, but we still have to, practically go out and do it.
Mhm.
And that's where I'm always about being a doer, because that's where people get caught up, because it's about, you know, uh, doing things practically.
Mhm.
And so that's really what I try and, relate to people and say, hey, don't just talk about it, but be about it and do it. If you want a budget, you have to adhere to it because the outcome is what you're really working towards.
I
I
I've
mean,
had actually the same challenges that you all have had. We obviously talk a lot on Modern Husbands about the importance of money dates, and for my wife and I, we've been married for 21 years, and after 21 years, you've got a lot of it figured out, right? You're in a routine. You have a pretty good understanding of what is important to each of you. You have a budget. You're pretty good with living through what you set out to live through in your budget, your spending plan, however you want to define it. But like you two, we're both busy. Particularly my wife. I mean, she's not even in town as we're recording this. We have 3 kids, four cats, and a dog. I mean, we're flying around all over the place.
Ah,
So just finding the time to regularly meet is harder for us because if for us, we have our roles divided up where essentially I manage the day-to-day finances. That is anything that can be tracked electronically. The only thing she does with day-to-day finances is manages anything that comes in the mail. Everything else I do, saving, investing, big picture stuff. I do now. I just because I manage the money doesn't mean I control it. We control it together. We have
yeah.
conversations about what we want to do together to reach our financial goals, make sure that we're spending money consistent with our values. And inevitably, what happens for us is that we need that time to have conversations about like kind of the big financial decisions, right? Like
Yeah.
she wants to buy the last big one was new furniture for the living room. And for me, that's a lot of money. I grew up in a house where we took couches from a house that was destroyed in a tornado and put it in our living room. And my dad put a board underneath the cushions. And
I
that was,
want to see a picture of that, Brian. I would love to see that.
it is quality. I think I can show you a picture of the couch when it's inside the destroyed home
Ooh.
from the tornado. I don't know if it's in our living room, but like that's kind of my norm,
Yeah.
where the norm, I guess, for a lot of people is like $3,000, $5,000, whatever on a living room couch. Like that
Yeah.
to me is
On a
painful.
singular couch.
Yeah.
yep.
Yeah. And I can't. So for us, like it's easy, I think, for all of us to have conversations about here's how you go about money
Yeah.
conversations. But
Right.
man, when you actually have to go through the ones that in advance are hard, it can be a challenge.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
and it's easy to avoid. I mean, we don't want to actually have conversations that are challenging or that will be have, where we have a differing view from our partner, and where it involves a good sum of money, or it is emotional. A lot of times I think it's hard to have money conversations when you know that one person is more emotional about it. And it might not be a couch, it might be life insurance, or it might be, an inheritance, or it might be, how do we handle kids' education? And it's different when it's an emotional or a pull that makes it challenging to even start the conversation. And so I like to say, and so you call them money dates and I call them money conversations. I think if we can start with, what makes this important versus how are we going to do it, or do we agree? Let's just talk about what makes this important for each person, and then get into the meat of it. And it probably will take more than one conversation too for some of those hefty ones.
And I don't think any of us want to try and avoid the conversations.
Right.
I think we allow the hustle and bustle of life to dictate the pace that we move at. And Ericka and I were recently talking, and I was like, it's one thing when you talk about effort versus intention. And everybody has the best laid of intentions, but are you putting the effort behind it? And effort can be a defining factor to show really where your intentions lie. Because you can say, well, I intend to do this or I intend to do that, but never put the corresponding effort in place to make it happen or to do it, then did you really have the intention at all?
Mm-hmm.
And so I look at it as, we have conversations, but there's some specific things we need to get into. And I've got to be more intentional about putting the effort out there to have those specific conversations. Because when we have those are going to help us move forward, because like you said, Brian, we're pretty much on the same page with a number of things, but we're trying to navigate kind of some next level things. And so if I make the intention and the effort to have that conversation, is going to help with the path that we're going down as well. And it begins to matter because you talked about the emotion associated with it, and everybody wants to see effort when you're talking about emotion.
Mm-hmm.
Do you two have conversations only between you two, or do you ever involve a financial planner?
It's funny you should bring that up because I think the conversation we're talking about having relates to one of our to our financial planner.
Yeah, he actually started the conversation, and we just haven't decided between us to finish it
Right.
and make a decision, right? So he started it, and yeah, I mean, the interesting thing is, I think that it's really good to have a mediator. So be it, depending on what the conversation's about, your tax preparer, your insurance person, your financial advisor, like none of these decisions really need to be done in a vacuum. And it's just, it's wise to seek good counsel, right? And so if you trust people, I think that would be helpful to make sure that you have the right person to help you with those decisions as well.
Yeah, that's how we handle anytime there's like a transition point in our life, or if there's a really big conversation. We try to meet with our financial planner once a year. We have a guy that is fee only, and he has all the information in hand, but there are very specific things that he knows that he needs to do for my wife and I. And like you said, having that trusted professional, somebody that is bound by the fiduciary standard, meaning that they are responsible for, by law, putting your interests ahead of their own.
Mm-hmm.
That person, can, as you said, they can be a mediator. They can help kind of guide the tough conversations, and they can provide, like for us, like very like specific things. I have to confess, I confessed this when we recorded with J.L. Collins last week, that I have 3 times tried to time the market. So here I am telling everybody, don't even bother with individual stocks, index funds, no cost. Do not ever get actively managed mutual funds. The data says that index funds over a decade always outperform them. And the first 2 times I did it, I was highly successful. And that is bad. Because now all of a sudden I think I'm smart.
Got that overconfidence.
False precedent.
That's right. Yeah. So I have all this overconfidence because I think I'm smart. And And I 2 weeks, maybe it's 3 weeks ago, I had started dollar costing averaging out of the market, and the market was turning for the worse. So now it's even worse. Now I'm thinking, oh, I'm really smart now. So then I decide, hey, I'm gonna short the market.
Oh Lord.
So not individual stocks. I shorted the S&P with a lot of money, and about a day and a half into the historic upturn of the S&P, literally it like shot up. A day and a half in, I'm like nauseous. I can't think about anything else.
Yeah.
I lost 3% in a day and a half, and that 3% felt like 300%, and I
Yeah.
immediately covered my shorts, got back in, and I will never ever do that again. That was one of the reasons that I went to the financial planner. I told him, you're gonna be my guardian angel, man. You can't let me do that again.
You know what? I think that that's important to note, that when we get burned or when we trip over ourselves, those are the best lessons. I mean,
Mhm.
it is, we cannot discount those lessons. And as long as you learn them,
Right.
there are some people who would have continued to try and say, I'm going down this route. I won. You know what I mean? But I think life has.
I feel like you have to embrace them too, not just learn them.
That's exactly right.
Forget about them a couple of years later, and
Mhm.
we got
Brian
to
will be back on
really
trying to short the market. Yeah, Brian will be back at it trying to do it again.
Right. Nope. Good for you. See, that's you thinking like a Michigan person, not Ohio State person. I couldn't help myself.
He's going to edit that part out. Ericka, Chris, though, I was struck by your conversations about, though, making the effort, and I really appreciate that. I really like that. How do you remind yourself to make that effort? Do you have a check-in with yourself? Do you have a check-in with each other? How do we, because I mean, as you said, there's the hustle and bustle of life. You're busy with careers, with family, with just all the life stuff that goes on. How do we make sure there's time for those money conversations? How do we make sure that there's the time to put forth the effort?
Well, I think I'm going to say this up front, that we are probably the exception versus the norm. Because here we are talking about, financial topics and marriage and relationships in our podcast, and we're doing the same on yours now.
Yeah.
But I think that,
You're constantly reminded of it. Check.
Yeah, we are.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we, even outside of that, even before we started to go into our own content creation, we beat the proverbial horse to death.
We did. We over communicated.
Yeah, but I don't think that's the standard with most people. Because most people don't beat the horse to death like the two of us will. And so I think, if you go back and just to level set with historically some of the story of how we grew up and how our experiences were, I think I've always leaned towards, creating a different outcome, creating a different pathway for our lives, as a husband, as a father. So I've always been about putting the intention and the effort forward because I knew I wanted something different. And so I think in our relationship, I always say I'm the visionary.
Mm-hmm.
Ericka is the practical tactician of sorts.
And I will give some practical tips on that.
Right.
I will do that.
Right. And so I think together, that's how we're able to do it, because I'm always thinking like long term, big picture, strategy, things that we want to accomplish. If it's just even if it's just project based things around the home, I'm always seeing this big picture, and then I have to bring that big picture back, and we have to have a conversation because Ericka is more practical, and she has to get steps 1, 2, and 3. I'm on steps 6, 7, 8 because I've already worked out the first 5 steps, and then I've got to come back and say, okay, let's start with step 1 so you can, pace along with me.
Or he sees the vision and I have to craft steps 1, 2, and 3 because he's seeing something further along. I think practically speaking, though, that what can help folks, one is to keep your priorities to a minimum. It's not a priority if you have 10 of them. That is
Yeah,
not a
Right.
priority.
true.
Right.
So keep your priorities to, I would say, three top priorities, right? So one of our top priorities is travel. That's where we will spend money. We always have to talk about where we're going and what that looks like. Another top priority obviously is continuing to invest for our future, right? And another one is to preserve, our short-term savings, right? So like, and so if we are looking at our top priorities, how
And
does
stick to those.
today's decision or this particular thing we want to do bump up against those priorities? And then, so I would say make sure and that changes, right? Like, so maybe one year your priority is not travel and it's something different. And so like you wouldn't spend as much money. So this year in particular, one of our priorities was a home remodel. And so that meant on some other stuff we weren't going to spend as much money, right? And so that was the top priority. We made room for that. And so when you do that, then you know how to focus a conversation. Then the other thing is, very practically, you might have to put it on your calendar and just say, hey, we're going to talk about
Yeah.
this. Here is our mini agenda. We don't have to like stick 100% to that, but here is a mini agenda. And I do not advocate for an hour long conversation. Sometimes these conversations are 20 minutes,
Mm.
and it can be who's going to do what. He's going to go do the research. I'm going to create a budget, and then we're going to come back together in 2 weeks, right? Maybe that's all that the conversation is about.
And it can be more than one conversation.
Absolutely.
Because like even using that example of we focused on a remodel this year, it started out, like I said, I had this grandiose plan
Mm-hmm.
and we talked about it, but then we had to come back and circle back and say, okay, let's get practical with what does the budget look like?
Mm-hmm.
And what are we going to start with first? And what are we going to do? If we're going to do that, are we going to sacrifice something else? And so it was a series of conversations, but it had to start with the first conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I think, the other thing is if it's urgent, um, something else might have to move out of the way, right? So for those with young kids, we need to get somebody to watch them, because sometimes, you can't have a conversation at 7 o'clock in the morning or 9 o'clock at night,
Mm-hmm.
and so get someone to watch the kids or get outside the house and have this important conversation, especially if like it's time sensitive. And so I think these are ways to make it the priority in the moment so you actually accomplish where you want to be. And then I like people to be theoretical and say, how are you going to feel when that decision is made or this one thing is accomplished? How are you going to feel? Will you have regrets if it doesn't get done? Or, what is it going to look like on the other side? Is it a once in a lifetime opportunity, or is this something that can wait another year? Right. So, we actually had a mini conversation the other day, and I realized, I was like, let's get another car. But honestly, it's not more important than this other thing. And when I said it out loud, I realized it was true.
Mm.
And so if there was something that needs to fall off the priority list, maybe it's the purchase of a vehicle in 2024. And I'm okay with that because I want the other thing more. We as a family want the other thing more. And so,
But I think you setting a precedent there also,
yeah,
because all these things are about trade-offs
yeah,
too.
yeah, yeah,
Because people, when they try to budget or they have a plan or a strategy, you have to factor in trade-offs because, let's be honest, until we're all independently wealthy, you may not be able to do everything.
yeah.
Mhm.
There's
And you
always
have to have
right.
Mhm.
absolutely, and you have to have those trade-offs that you're willing to, exchange this for that, or you're willing to say, let's wait and do this later. And that was a principle that we've operated on for the whole 25 years we've been married. We've been saying no to things because we want to say yes to the bigger thing.
That's right.
And when you know what that bigger thing is, it bleeds back into what Ericka's talking about with the priorities,
Mhm.
because those priorities may reshuffle.
Mhm.
What was number 3 may become number 1. What's number 2 may become number 3. But we're willing to have that conversation and exchange something for another.
A quick word to make you aware of free resources that can be at your fingertips in moments. In the description of this podcast episode, you will find links to free resources. From Better and Worth, download You're Doing It Backwards: 7 Reasons Your Money Relationship Isn't Working with Your Partner. And from Modern Husbands, download their free micro power courses, Money Marriage You Budget and Money Marriage You Save, by subscribing to their newsletter. Now back to the show.
Yeah, there are two things that you said in particular that between the two of you that really stuck out to me and what my wife and I do. And yeah, the first thing is just recognizing that at the end of the day, we're usually decision fatigued, right? Like if it's 9 or 10 o'clock at night, like our brains are just not in a position to be able to make really good, thoughtful financial decisions. So have the conversations earlier in the day. We try to do it on a Saturday or Sunday morning. And then when you're having the conversation, sometimes they can be a little emotional. So the last thing you need is like the kids running around, making a bunch of noise, any kind of distraction that can add to agitation. Just make sure that wherever you're having a conversation, it's in an area where you can really have a deep, meaningful talk that is free of distractions. But boy, there was something else you brought up that was just so important, and that's that you've got to have somebody kind of playing the devil's advocate. Now, like for my wife and I, sometimes we naturally do that because I might see it one way, she might see it the other. So we might play that role, not by design, just by who we are. Where she might say, "I want this, this, and this," and then I'm naturally going to say, "But as Chris, you were saying, talking about trade-offs, I'm going to say, well, okay, if we have this and this and this, how are you going to feel when we don't have, that, and that?"
Right.
And that is an important way to approach these trade-off decisions, is to play the counterbalance to it. Because, and sometimes, like for us, oftentimes, and I'm sure you two are the same, you're naturally agreeing. So sometimes you actually have to be intentional about saying, okay, let's both sit down and think about what's the trade-off? What won't we have? And how
Chris hates it when I do that. I'll be honest with you. Let's be honest. When I played the other role, Chris is like, really now?
Well, you know what? The thing about it, as you were saying that, Brian, the thing that it brought to my mind is a trade-off doesn't mean no.
Right.
And what people don't want to hear is no.
True.
And if you are willing to trade off, it may mean later.
Yeah, I love
or not now.
Right.
Yeah.
I love that terminology. If not now, when? Right. So I'm not saying no to my vehicle that I want. I might be saying yes in a year versus yes in 3 months. Right. So, or 18 months or whatever it is. Right. So that is, if we can capture if not now, when, then that will help us to understand how big of a priority certain things are, and then what to really go after so that you're really clear.
And I think to clarify that too, it removes the distraction. And when you're talking about making money decisions, you can make more coherent and more logical decisions when you remove distractions and focus on the actual reality. Because that exchange and that putting it off to if not now, then when, you remove that from a conversation right now that can be a major roadblock or distraction, and you place it somewhere else.
Right.
And you can come back to that and address it at a later time. And like I said, it's not no. So you didn't get no, and now you've placed it down the road, and you can come back and you can focus on what really matters in the moment.
That's right.
Well said. I wanted to ask this question as well. And again, I'll start with Eric and Chris. I'll start with you. But what are some non-negotiables in your financial life that arise from what you have seen in your professional life? So what are the non-negotiables?
I think there's two that come right off. There's a couple. There's probably three. One is we're going to always be saving for our future, period, hands down, hard stop.
Hard stop.
So we're not going to let some goal or something we want right now to get in the way of that. We're consistent and true givers, so we're not going to let something get in the way of us being givers. And I think the other thing is not keeping debt around like it's a pet, right? So I think that can, being able to use debt and behave as if it can stay, let's say, right? So I could say yes to a vehicle right now today that I want and have a car payment. And
There's no way.
that's a non-negotiable for
I'm with
us,
you
right?
too.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
so that's why the decision for that would be on pause so we can do these other things in 2024. And so I think that those would be my top. I don't know if you would say something different, but
I would agree with those because I think, I joke about credit, and our credit philosophy is 100% down, 0 a month.
mhm.
And so that's why we can say that. But I think another non-negotiable for me is that we don't go into savings for just random things.
Mhm.
And people use the savings as their buffer. And that's not what our savings is for. It's for
Right.
emergencies, it's for other things. We save for big things, but we really plan those things as well. And so I don't plan to do major purchases or do big things based on my savings. My savings is that. It's savings. It's therefore, and I'm talking about short-term liquid savings, not long-term investments for retirement. I'm just
Mhm.
thinking of, the short-term, 6 to 12 months of emergency funds. I think people play with that a lot of the time when they shouldn't.
Mhm.
And so for me, that's really a non-negotiable. And we set a floor on what that should look like. And we actually set a ceiling too, because we're like, well, we don't need to have above this amount. But if we ever get close to that floor, we both start to,
Get
you
uncomfortable.
get a little nervous and you're shifting in your chair. And so for me, that's really a non-negotiable. We stay within that floor and that ceiling because there's no need to play around with that, because if something really happens and you need those funds, then you've allowed those to get away because you have compromised in that area. So that's really an additional non-negotiable for me.
And I would actually say the reason why that's true is because we have experienced layoffs in our household, and we started a business where, no dollars were coming in for a while. And so it is based in not, just because it's a good to do thing or it's an adult to do thing
It's a
or someone
practical
told us.
thing.
It's because in our life there were moments when we wish we had it, period. And so I think, learning from those lessons in life and, developing the non-negotiable from it is where that comes from.
So I wanted to jump in and ask, for our listeners, you said kind of it's a non-negotiable. You got to set those floors and ceilings. Do you have any advice for our listeners on how to set those or where they should set them? Because I imagine it's different for everyone.
Yeah. Oh, for emergency fund?
Yeah.
Yes. So I usually say the calculation is really how much it costs to run your household for 1 month. Minimally, you should have 3 months of that. Um, People who are business owners should probably have 6.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are really conservative, you'll probably want 12 months.
Mhm.
And I honestly, it makes sense when you are in a job that pays more money. I mean, we just had a friend who basically had their job
Experienced the
was,
layoff.
yeah, their job was eliminated and they were out of work for 10 months. And so when you think
Mhm.
about having 12 months, people think, oh, that's a long time. Or it's not terrible, but people will say, gosh, that's a lot of money to have. But when you're
Yeah.
at a certain income
Right.
level and then you're out of work for a year almost, that is stressful.
And I'll
And
add to
that's
that.
been a common story for the last 3 years now.
Absolutely.
But I even add to that is that, he received his severance and that could bridge the gap. But, if he didn't find what he was looking for in that time that severance
Mhm.
covered, I think it's just wise to have additional coverage,
Yeah, absolutely.
because then you can wait for the right thing.
And not just take anything.
Right. And I'm of the mindset that, as you continue to progress in your journey, you may get more from that 3 to 6 to 9 to 12 months, because Ericka says, I'm probably on that conservative side, just because I think I like to have margin. And margin to me is just cushion that allows me to move. And I make different decisions when I have that latitude. If I've got 12 months versus 3 months, my decision making process is very different.
Mhm.
And so I really encourage people to be progressive. Start with a month, build to 3 months, then build to 6 months, then 9 months, and you'll see how your decision making shifts also. And I think people can make better decisions under time of stress when they know they have, cushion
Yeah.
to back them up.
Very well said. Brian, how about you? What are some of the non-negotiables in your financial life?
Really, it comes down to two. And the first is anything that is going to ensure that we are financially healthy, right? And so what does that mean for us? That means that, and I want to be clear, we automate anything that is going to make us financially healthy. So for us, that means we're saving for retirement. We max out our retirements and we max out our HSAs. That's automated. We don't think about it. We don't have to do it. We schedule it and it's done. We make sure that we have the appropriate amount of emergency savings. I agree completely with Ericka and Chris. At least 3 months, 6 months. For me personally, I'm like Chris, man. I've got to have a lot in my emergency savings for me to feel comfortable. And where you put your savings matters, because if your savings and your checking at the same place, then you just open your mobile app and you're just treating your savings account like two checking accounts. You're just moving it back and forth, man. You need to make sure that it's out of sight, out of mind. So we have our savings in different buckets, different areas. So, we kind of sit and forget. And then, same thing with any healthcare, long-term disability insurance, health insurance, everything that makes us financially healthy. We automate all of that. And if we can't automate it, we use every behavioral finance trick we can to make it really, really hard to tap into, let's say, savings. And then the other thing for us is just we are hyper focused on making sure that we spend money based on our values, right? So if like there are things that we don't really value much, and that's where I'm going to be hyper vigilant in being very, very frugal. I don't want to waste any money on things that we don't value much. What do we value? Like education is a priority. So we make sure that, that is going to be taken care of for our kids, but they also recognize that it's something that they have to own. They got to own their own education and they have to take care of it for their kids. So those are really the two things. We automate whatever's needed for your financial health. And then we are vigilant about making sure that we spend our money on what we value most, which is education. And like you two, we love experiences and travel. I am not a stuff guy. I do not. I would live in a studio dump apartment if I was single. I don't really care about stuff, but man, give me money to travel the world. I'm all about it.
I love it.
Love it. Yeah.
Wait a second here. We're going to turn the tables here. Let's take 3 minutes here. Hold on. This is Dr. Ross is engaged. So for our listeners, I'm not sure if you're aware, but now all of a sudden the professional, the PhD, the expert is going to be put on the spot with his own process.
Drum roll, please.
I love how his cheeks got just as red as your hat there. That was funny.
They did. Look at that. So what steps have you taken so far in the engagement process that have been most beneficial to you?
So the thing that, part of my steps is just doing this podcast because it's a weekly reminder basically to just be a better partner, which just re-listening to the podcast as they get produced and interviewing these experts. That's always just been helpful for me, just as a weekly reminder. Checking with the finances. I teach on these things. So as Ericka and Chris, you were saying, you guys do this work. I spend a couple weeks every semester on insurance. So checking in on that and kind of reminding myself and taking those kind of conversations home. I will admit, even though yes, I've got this background in marriage and family therapy and financial counseling and stuff, the best thing that we have done is all on my partner. She came up, she read this article, and I can't find the article. I don't know where it came from, but it's just 5 questions that we ask each other. We try to ask each other every Sunday, and they're relationship questions. I can go through them kind of fast here, but it's what brought you joy or excitement this past week? Is there anything I have done to hurt you this past week that we can repair now? What are you looking forward to in the upcoming week? What's something worrisome or hard that's happening in the upcoming weeks? Is there anything I can help with? And what can I do next week to make you feel more loved?
I'm gonna need you to send those questions over to us.
I can't find the original article. I think it was one of those like Google like suggested articles. I'm pretty sure it comes from some of the work of John Gottman, who was a phenomenal marriage and family therapist, has been researching this area for healthy relationships for decades now. But it helps us connect, because I'm a big proponent that all financial questions are really just life questions. And so if we can get to be on the same page of like what we're planning for this next week, if we can be on the same page of just correcting kind of some of any relational issues that might have slipped by because of the hustle bustle, or that we didn't want to fully address them. And we do this like in a car ride, like to dinner, or if we're going to see family, we'll do it. And so it's 20 minutes to go through, like you said, Ericka, like just taking the 20 minutes, going through these. We kind of take turns, who goes first, who asks the question. But I think it's important that we ask each other the question. We actually read the question to each other, instead of reading it ourselves and then answering it.
That's great.
And so that's been, I think, one of the most beneficial things for us, of just saying, hey, and we actually, we have it on our Coexist app, Brian. So it comes up as a weekly reminder on Sundays, and so if we hadn't had time to it, it's actually kind of a chore thing, and it rotates who brings it up.
Wow.
Cool.
Well,
I love that.
I'm stealing those questions.
Yeah.
So I can't guarantee that I may manipulate those questions a bit and make them my own.
Well, and I think we've tweaked them a little bit already, and maybe that's why I can't find the original article. I would like to give them credit, but I'm pretty sure it comes from a lot of the work from John Gottman. So
awesome.
That's great.
Well, Dr. Ross, thank you for your wisdom. Ericka, Chris, you two are the best. Let's both hope and pray for a safe outcome on Saturday when the Ohio State University plays the team.
Go Blue. Go Blue.
See, I'm putting the win around that M right there.
And W for Wolverine.
And I'm going to be humble. I'm going to be humble. I don't know what's going to happen.
It should be a good overall game and experience.
That's right.
I hope so. I agree with you. All right, y'all. This was a great podcast. So much fun.
Yes. Thanks so much for having us.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us in today's special episode. Visit forbetterandworth.com and modernhusbands.com to learn more about our podcasts and how we service spouses across the globe. Until next time, be well.